Louis XIV had looked to expand the French borders ever since becoming king in 1643, and he successfully took some Spanish provinces after the War of Devolution in 1668. However, although the French had been militarily successful, he had to abandon the war efforts early due to foreign diplomatic pressure. This is because the Dutch, who were then under the usually pro-French De Witt brothers, feared his expansion into the Low Countries and went against their old ally. The De Witt brothers formed an alliance with their old enemy the English and the Swedish, and this triple alliance threatened to intervene on Spain's behalf. Louis felt betrayed by this, mainly because the French had backed the Dutch during their long independence struggle against the Spanish, and he sought to take revenge. But in order to do so, he had to bring the French out of isolation, and he did this in 1670 when he signed a secret alliance with the English and their newly restored monarch Charles II. In this treaty, Charles agreed to aid in a war against the Dutch and convert to Catholicism in return for annual subsidies and Dutch territory. Plus, Louis promised subsidies to Sweden to remain neutral in the future war, and interfere on his behalf should Brandenburg aid the Dutch. And in the Low Countries, Louis had support from Cologne and Munster, who helped pay for mercenaries for this war. So now, with powerful allies, France mobilised its army of nearly 200,000 men, and with England declared war on the Dutch in April 1672. They marched through Liège, which was pro-French, bypassed the defences of Maastricht, and captured Utrecht in June. However, under De Ruyter, the Dutch navy was able to hold back the English and French navies at Solebay, thus preventing an invasion from sea. But on land, the Dutch were still unable to stop such a large French army, so they decided to open the dikes, flooding the country's waterline to halt their advance. 1672 in Dutch history has been called the disaster year, and as people grew angry they blamed the De Witts, and they were executed by a mob in August. Their rival Prince William, who had the support of the Orangists, had already been appointed the new stadtholder, and since Amsterdam was now safe, he refused to make a quick peace, and got support from Brandenburg and the Holy Roman Emperor. Under Turenne, the French successfully held off imperial assaults across the Rhine until mid-1673, while another French army captured Maastricht. But in England, public and Parliament's opinion had turned against the war, and grew suspicious of the alliance with Catholic France after Charles married a Catholic. Plus, a quick victory was not possible as their navy was again defeated in August, and the Dutch took New York. So Parliament withdrew funding for the war. On the continent, Brandenburg lost Cleve, and retreated from the war in the summer of 1673. But by capturing Bonn, the Allies managed to push Munster and Cologne out of the war late in the year. England followed them at the beginning of 1674, just as Brandenburg and Spain entered the war on the Dutch side. Sweden honoured their alliance and attacked Brandenburg, starting the Scanian War, but France was now largely surrounded. Only small skirmishes took place along the Spanish border, but the French navy aided Sicilians in rising up against the Spanish. Then in July, the French successfully captured the relatively undefended Franche-Comté region from Spain, while in the Low Countries they went on the defensive. Although they did manage to defeat a larger combined allied army at Senefa in July, they lost Grave in October. And in the Rhineland, Turenne attacked the imperial forces throughout 1674, preventing them from uniting. But in 1675, the imperial forces under Montecuccoli managed to inflict some devastating blows against the French, in one killing Turenne. But by then the front was now largely stabilised, and both sides had very little to gain at such a great cost, so they entered into negotiations. Small skirmishes and fighting did however continue. For instance, imperial forces captured Philipsburg, and De Ruyter was killed in battle in 1676. But in late 1677, Prince William married the niece of Charles II of England, threatening to bring England into the war against France. To improve his position before quickly making peace, Louis captured Ypres in Ghent in early 1678, and then made peace in August. Louis agreed to hand back most of the towns he took in the lowlands, in return for Franche-Comté, Ypres and other small towns. But Louis's imperial ambitions continued, and he would go on to face defensive alliances in the War of the Reunions, Grand Alliance and Spanish Succession.